How does Dan Brown write a novel? And to answer the first obvious question you're going to fling at me, Dan Brown is the author of the best-selling Robert Langdon series, featuring titles like Angels and Demons, Inferno, and The Da Vinci Code. Yep, I bet you heard of that last one. Brown's writing is extremely formulaic in principle. His books, and by extension their movie adaptations, are practically the same story told over and over again. A symbologist named Robert is dragged into a mystery that uses his knowledge of history, art, and symbols to discover some secret that could change the world. But the Dan Brown formula is an interesting case study into the tropes of a mystery adventure novel. His characters and plot points are perfect examples that could have been lifted from writing textbooks. So let's take a closer look at what exactly Brown does to capture his audience again and again with the same simple techniques. His characters. Every novel Brown has written can be read as a standalone adventure and focuses around his main protagonist, Robert Langdon, a world-renowned symbologist and Harvard professor. Langdon is an intelligent man who is well-versed in history, art, English, and secret organizations. He is also claustrophobic from a childhood incident where he fell down a well, and I guess got saved by Lassie, and his memory is sometimes eidetic, whenever it fits the plot convenience. But alongside Langdon, Dan Brown also includes the female sidekick who shares his adventure and actually grows as a character. These characters being Vittoria Vetra, Sophie Nauvoo, Catherine Solomon, and Sienna Brooks. The female sidekick is an intelligent woman who was related to the dead guy in the story in some way. Sophie's grandfather was curator of the Louvre, Vittoria's father created the antimatter, Catherine's brother was secretary of the Smithsonian, and so on and so forth. The female sidekick also specializes in a complementary part of the mystery beside Langdon. There's codes to solve, Sophie's a cryptologist. There's science and church-related ethics questions, yay, Vittoria's a physicist and raised by a devout Catholic. And they are always attractive and single, because of course they are. So, the dead guy in the story is the point of attack in every Brown book. Some intelligent and influential man has either died or been put in peril. Leonardo Vetra and Jacques Santier were murdered. Peter Solomon was kidnapped, and Bertrand Zobrist committed suicide. The dead guy's purpose is to set the plot in motion and to be related to the female sidekick. But the most influential character tropes in any of Brown's books is the relationship between his two villain types, the red herring and the hidden mastermind. A red herring is defined as a clue that is intended to be misleading or distracting. Spoiler warning for the rest of the content in this video. The red herring is hired by the mastermind to do all the dirty work and convince the audience that they know more than Langdon and his team. In the Da Vinci Code, we are introduced to Bishop Aringrosa and Silas the albino monk who are behind the murder of the dead guy. But later in the story it is revealed that the teacher that they took orders from was Lee Teabing, Robert Langdon's friend. In my opinion, this is the best example of Brown's formulaic choices because Bishop Aringrosa literally translates to Bishop Red Herring. But you can find this idea of the true villain in every single one of Brown's books. But Dan Brown's formula doesn't just apply to the characters he chooses to include. He also features the time-honored writing tradition of the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin is a term referring in essence to the thing that everybody in the story wants. In Inferno, Langdon's quest is trying to find a virus before it kills half the world's population. In the Da Vinci Code, the MacGuffin is the Holy Grail, but by tangible extension, the cryptext that has the clues. And the exact same can be said for the Masonic Pyramid and the Lost Symbol. For Brown, the MacGuffin is both the prize and the treasure map all at once. And in addition to the items and people he includes, Brown also utilizes a strict 3-act structure in his novels. For instance, each book starts out with a prologue where the dead guy dies. This type of event that kicks off the plot is called the point of attack. Some sources will call this the inciting incident, but that actually comes a sequence later when Langdon actually gets involved in the book's mystery. The point of attack in the Da Vinci Code is when Sophie's grandfather dies and leaves the clues to the Holy Grail. The inciting incident is when Langdon accepts Sophie's offer to help him escape the Louvre and follow the clues. The inciting incident can also be called the call to action, and it's defined as the moment the protagonist chooses to accept the quest they're offered. It's also the end of the first act. The biggest events in the second act are the first and the main culmination. The first culmination is about the midpoint of the story, and it's usually the character's first major victory, like Langdon and Sophie finding the cryptex and escaping to a safe house. This is also where their motive generally changes. Langdon is no longer just wishing to escape the French police, but actually find the Grail. The main culmination is the end of the second act, and it's here that Brown generally puts his first twist, the hidden villain. It's also where he puts the first resolution. Continuing with the Da Vinci Code, it's where the characters finally open the cryptex, and there's another mystery to follow for the third act. But the tension leading up to that plot point has been resolved. Brown's third act is generally his shortest, and he likes to compensate by adding a second twist in some of his books. In the Da Vinci Code, we find out that the Holy Grail isn't what we were expecting. Angels and Demons gives its villain a horrible truth, and Inferno's virus isn't what we thought it was. But a Robert Langdon book always ends the same way. The mystery is solved. Dan Brown uses these story tropes and techniques heavy-handedly, and while his writing may seem a tad formulaic, his model makes a fascinating and obviously successful story.